Steadily the wings roll along the assembly lines, moving from minor to major subassembly, then to final assembly. Overhead, the great spans move as the skilled craftsmen in each department complete their work. This wing has just left the surface and floats department, where self-sealing gas tanks were installed. American engineers first developed these tanks, and they'll take the punishment of a .50 caliber machine gun bullet without losing a pint of gas. Wings must also be strong to hold the mounts for great motors and the mechanism for the heavy retractable landing wheel gears. The shark's mouth is a part of the empennage, a complete unit of the after tail section, which also supports the stabilizers, elevators, and rudder, which guide the bomber in flight. Here is the most vulnerable part of the plane. Damage to any of the important control surfaces of the empennage might result in the plane's complete destruction. And so, a gunner is stationed here to fight off enemy pursuit ships. And here are center sections nearing completion. Work goes on inside and out, even while they're moving to a new department. These almost finished parts, with bulkheads already installed, are waiting to roll into final assembly. Welding still plays an important part in building a bomber. Motor mounts and many other primary structures, which are subjected to great stresses, must be fused together by expert craftsmen who know their jobs. It is important to remember that welding even increases the original strength of the separate pieces. Expert technicians are now working on plans for an all-welded ship, but it takes years to train expert welders. On these men rests much of the responsibility for the safety of the ship in flight. Taking a leaf from the experience book of the automobile manufacturers, aircraft builders have installed moving belts of their own. Here you see aircraft assembly line production in one of its most interesting phases. For these intricate small parts must roll off the line in ever-increasing quantities if we are to meet the production challenge of a Hitler-controlled Europe. Certain secondary structure and control parts of the bomber require the use of the strongest metals available, castings made of magnesium and aluminum alloys. Every precaution must be taken to ensure absolute perfection, so each casting is X-rayed by a machine powerful enough to detect the slightest flaw. The rays of this machine are so penetrating that the operator must leave the insulated chamber while the camera is at work. It will photograph through solid metal parts several inches thick. Another type of flaw detector is the magnaflux, which reveals cracks on a metal surface invisible to the human eye. You'll understand how important these expensive operations are when you're informed that only 1% of all parts tested reveal an imperfection of any kind. More than 25,000 parts go into the making of each bomber, and this does not count nuts, bolts, and rivets. Faced with the necessity of trebling and quadrupling aircraft production as soon as possible, the large manufacturers are employing a system called subcontracting, which means farming out parts of their big contracts to smaller manufacturers over the country. This relieves some of the economic strain on manufacturers who do not have defense contracts and speeds up aircraft production. As soon as these parts reach the major factory, they are sorted and installed in the planes. All parts move to final assembly. Here's one of the great wheels built to withstand the shock of high-speed landings. From another major subassembly comes the nose section. As she rolls, you can see the complex instrument panel with its dials, gauges, and controls. Accuracy, precision, and speed are shown by the ease with which these fuselage sections are spliced together. Now the almost complete wing, carrying gas tanks and the motor wheel nacelle, moves along the assembly line. Here is the reward of careful planning, timing, and good workmanship. Spliced firmly together, the nose, center, and tail sections of the fuselage move overhead. Rolling on mobile jigs, the wings are spliced into the fuselage by powerful steel forgings. As soon as the wings are locked in, the motor swings overhead and is lowered to be bolted into the motor mounting in the wing nacelle. Note the oil tank separated from the motor by a firewall. Miles of wires, cables, and pipes link the nerve centers of the ship. All gas tanks have separate leads to the carburetor. The piano hinge on the leading edge of this wing permits easy repairs. Here, the giant powerhouse is bolted into the strong motor mounting. A skilled mechanic checks the gas line connections. High-octane gas is readily inflammable, and this part of the assembly requires unusual caution. Now we begin to see the great bombers coming to life. This is the final assembly where the last of the intricate pieces of mechanism are installed, the power turrets and the secret bomb sight. Before it leaves the factory, the bomber is camouflaged, an important precaution to render her invisible from the air and hard to see in the sky. Note the light underbody and the dark color above. The light, strong plexiglass nose is fitted into place, guaranteeing perfect vision below for the bombarder to sight his targets. Day and night, the big doors roll up so the bombers can be moved to make way for those which follow. She's not quite finished yet, but she has to keep moving along. Our modern aircraft production lines run clear to the flying fields, where all points of the plane are checked and rechecked. In the background, a new plant promises an even greater production of fighting ships. Here are ships of the line, awaiting a final checkup. When they're ready, the great four-bladed propellers are installed and the motors ground tested for perfect performance. One of the last and one of the most important checks is the testing of the landing gear. A faulty retractable landing gear may mean the loss of a ship on which tens of thousands of dollars and many thousands of man-hours of labor have been spent. At last, she's ready to take off, ready to respond to a rigid test which will submit her to all the pressure of combat conditions. Here is the medium bomber, fast and tough, perfect down to the last detail, and a perfect tribute to the designers, engineers, and craftsmen who are bringing thousands like her to life to help fight democracy's battle.